Hello, my name is Mimi, and I'm presenting with Camille and Jessa. We are all high school seniors who have spent the last 2 years learning about some of the issues our world faces. And because of that, we've come to realize just how much there is to do. The issue of women's education impacts our lives too, as we realize just how lucky we are to be able to receive an education, and how unjust it is that not all girls are offered the same opportunity. Women's education, or lack thereof, is a crucial issue to our world that, if solved, will not only help the well being and dreams of young girls, but could also help resolve otherworldly issues like poverty, overpopulation, and climate change, ultimately making our world a better place. According to the World Bank, there are 132 million girls who aren't in school worldwide. Here is a map from the Brookings Institution. As you can see, the red spots are where girls are severely disadvantaged academically, the majority of the countries being in Africa and Asia. This map is interesting though, because while this presentation is about women's lack to access of education, there are also parts of the world where boys are disadvantaged academically, many of those countries being in South America. Education is vital to women's empowerment because it enables them to respond to challenges and do more than just what is expected in their quote-unquote traditional role. Despite that, India still has one of the lowest female literacy rates in Asia, according to the US Census Bureau. This negatively impacts not only the lives of the illiterate, but of their families and India's economic development. Luckily, that is starting to change. Literacy rates in India have risen from 18.3% in 1951 to 64.8% in 2001, along with the enrollment of women in schools, which has risen 47.16% in said years. In August of 2009, the Indian Parliament passed the Right to Education Act, which made education free and required for children ages 6 to 14. Unfortunately, even with that act, many girls had to drop out, needing to help their families with housework or take care of younger siblings. To help this cause, the central government of India also launched the Sakar Bharat Mission for Female Literacy in 2009, which aims to reduce female illiteracy and spread education and awareness, even in the most remote and rural parts of India. In 2006, 10.3% of girls between the ages of 11 to 14 weren't in school, and that number dropped to 4.1% in 2018. So progress is being made, but there's still further to go. As girls get closer and closer to high school age, more and more drop out. In 2012, by the time girls in India reached high school, only 34% of them were still in school, as according to As Our Own. While more girls are receiving an education now than 50 years ago, the struggle isn't over until all girls have an equal opportunity for education. Africa is a continent where women are seriously disadvantaged academically. According to the Global Citizen in Africa, women have a higher chance of dying in childbirth than finishing primary school. Not only is this a heartbreaking statistic, but it only enforces the patriarchal oppression in these countries. In a society where you're not granted education as a woman, you are forced to depend on the man for survival. In East Africa, only one disabled woman is educated for every 5 disabled men, which only puts up more barriers for disabled women who already face too many challenges. Women are then treated as property to be sold for profit for families. To break these inhumane transactions, we must educate the women of those communities so they can provide for themselves and families and don't need to be sold. Girls in South Africa must fight for their rights with their communities and families to attend school because of the social status and lack of emphasis on women's education. The Borgen Project has also taught us that even when women have access to education, there is a wide gap in quality education that white girls have compared to black girls, thanks to apartheid. Racial injustice is just another component of the struggle to educate women in Africa. If you think America has a teen pregnancy issue, think again, because in sub-Saharan Africa, between 31% and 51% of girls give birth before they turn 18. In sub-Saharan Africa, once you become pregnant, it is essentially a death sentence for all hopes of a higher education.
Women must conform to the societal duties of becoming a housewife and give up on their dreams. There is an African proverb that goes, if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate an entire nation. This is why we need to give women better opportunities, because when women thrive, they lift everyone else up around them too.
So, if women's education is so important, then why hasn't this issue been resolved yet? One of the main reasons why women lack access to education is due to poverty. Many families have low income, and education is expensive. People need to pay for teachers, books, food, etc. Even quote unquote free schools have additional fees for exams and supplies. And children of uneducated parents are taught different values, like work might be more important than school. Another reason is due to sexual violence. Around 60 million girls are sexually assaulted on their way to school or at school each year. That affects their emotional, mental, and physical health, which can lead to low concentration and higher risk of dropouts. Some sexually assaulted girls also result in pregnancies, dealing with the stigmas and uncomfortable judgment from peers. There's also the issue of cultural norms. A lot of communities believe that girls might be better suited toward the kitchen or toward housework rather than spending their time getting an education. But educating girls can lead to less child and teen pregnancies. For every year attended in school, their first child is delayed by 10 months. And if a child does have a baby, it decreases her chances of attending and finishing school, and that baby could have malnutrition or diseases. Some girls live in remote, faraway areas, meaning that the distance from their homes to school is too far, with some students having to walk up to 3 hours each way. There's also the issue of national violence. Some teachers and students live in countries with conflict, so they often have to flee their homes, and they don't have the time nor the quote unquote luxury to focus on education when they are struggling just to survive. Students need the right environment to learn in, but some don't even have access to a good classroom. They may be taught in overstuffed rooms or rooms that are run down, and that's if they're lucky enough to have a building to be taught in at all. Some are taught outside, which sounds nice at first, but then you realize that that means there isn't even a bathroom or running water.
Women need proper education. It is not just a problem that concerns women, it involves everyone. According to Global Citizen, over 130 million young women globally aren't allowed to be enrolled in school. Evidence has shown that when girls go to primary and secondary schools, they are more likely to have better jobs and access to family planning, which means that the general quality of life will be better for all. Along with that, educating communities can be just as important. Many girls are not given an education because their families and communities don't prioritize it, believing that they need the girls to stay home to help take care of family members or do chores. Educating women can also help resolve the world's issue of overpopulation, as educated women tend to have fewer children, and when they do, they have their children later in life. If the world achieved 100% enrollment of girls in primary and secondary school, there would be 843 million fewer people by 2050. Providing an education will also lower the amount of families in poverty, which benefits the economy and spreads money to other causes. As most of the world knows, climate change is real and we must do something to stop it before it becomes unstoppable. What hasn't crossed most people's minds is how providing a girl's education can be part of that solution. Teaching women about climate change can affect their decisions. Since typically women make those household decisions, providing education would allow women to make more sustainable choices. And by 2050, educating women and girls would reduce 59.6 gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere. Educating communities can improve every effort to have an improved girls' education because then the communities in these places want this education to happen. According to the World Bank, during the Ebola outbreak in 2014 to 2016, girls faced more sexual violence, coercion, and exploitation. There's also a rise of teen pregnancies, and once girls were visibly pregnant, they weren't allowed to return to school. According to the World Economic Forum, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, girls' education has been put even more on hold, and it's easy to see the difference between the privileged and underprivileged. With more time at home, their chores and responsibilities may increase, leaving them with less time to study for school and assignments. Not only are girls missing out on their education, but they also miss out on midday meals which are fed to children in school and which girls may not be able to afford. This is just widening the gap of poverty and continuing the cycle of inequality. According to the World Economic Forum, only 36% of residents of lower middle-class countries have access to the internet.
There are many things we can do to help fix this issue. One of the many aspects that we can focus on to resolve this issue would be healthcare. We could increase access to reproductive healthcare services. Educated women could also work in healthcare, helping others. We could also increase access to better transportation. As I said before, the distance between home and school is one of the barriers of a girl's education. That could be solved by giving kids bikes or scooters so they could travel to and from school in a shorter time. In countries like Colombia, Ecuador, and Iran, the legal age of marriage is shockingly low, and that needs to change. According to the UN, in sub-Saharan Africa, 40% of girls are married before they turn 18, and 30% of those give birth before they're 18. Governments in these countries need to raise the legal age of marriage. They could also be a bit more attentive to their citizens and create laws that promote sexual education to prevent stuff like genital mutilation. Donations. Perhaps most obviously is that there is a lack of funding. Developing nations can give other nations resources like money or reusable school supplies. Workforce. Even after receiving an education, it may be hard for women to find jobs, so enabling women's active participation in the workforce will help a lot. And volunteer staff. Spreading awareness of this issue through petitions and letters and nonprofits can lead to people donating their money to this cause, as well as attract volunteers. Volunteers from other nations can donate their time, building schools, teaching children, providing security, and more.
We have the solution. Educate women. Give men and women equal treatment in the classroom. Show children a future where their lives are their own. Women have the power to help change the world, but if we do not give them the resources they need to prosper, a cycle of inequality will continue to plague our society. After all, a woman's education is for the next generation.